After a very brief intermission, we're back live in our committee discussion portion here Tuesday, April 1st, April Fool's Day. I should have started out that we did present our transportation bill in the Senate at 11 o'clock today, and they did have quite a few questions. The press was there, so the behaviors were different.
They had press in their room?
They did today for the T-bill.
They knew Matt was coming, so.
It should get some attention. It is $894 million. It is the second largest department in the state government. So we should get some level of attention, but we didn't do too many controversial things in our bill. And if there's anything you want to add about what they had to say.
No, I think they might, like I said, they pointed out two things of concern that they had. And one of them was a memo that was given to them the day after we voted the bill out on March 18th, and it had to do with potential federal dollars that we might not receive under the formula funds. And they had a list of projects that might get delayed. And there were some bigger projects on that. So they wanted to make sure that we were in the loop if those things were happening. So there might be some language that they would have to report to us before they took action or after, and might go through the JCOP committee. And they had obviously seriously concerns about public transit, with what's going around that and the funding. They're taking a hard look at that. But outside of that, I don't think there was,
So they were saying a little might have to add some flexibility if in fact, some funding doesn't come through. A project may have to be delayed or whatever, maybe adjusted.
Yeah, no, and we were sort of surprised to look at that list because we didn't see. We're like, what? Yeah, there were some big projects on there. So
It's a big list.
well, bigger projects. What was there, like 10 on there? Yeah, somewhere around.
Killington jumped out at me, and the Winooski River, Winooski Bridge. We can get that.
Yeah.
That's what we can get that from Jenna Morris at is it Morris? Jenna Morris at the Agency of Transportation did the presentation, so we can certainly get that to share with the committee members. As far as the bill goes, they had a couple questions on some of the language, and they certainly hinted that after we took a number of pot shots for working all day as opposed to they can do twice the work and half the time, and they must have said that 8 or 10 times or more. Besides all the normal jabs at the house.
Yeah, no, it was all good. Like I said, they took a shot at us for not doing anything on a particular bill named after a former representative. And, and I think they are going to take a hard look at, some funding revenues. But at the end of the day, I don't know how that's going to go, but they did bring that up. So
we talked about purchase and use and all kinds of other things, and we'll see where that goes. It was really about 20 minutes by the time all the back and forths were done. It was about 25 minutes from, if you want to see it on Senate Transportation YouTube, from about 11:15 by the time it really started till about 11:35 or so, and that ballpark was their questions. They're taking public transit testimony this week. They're taking testimony on these projects. They've got a few other pieces on their agenda. It sure made a difference that who was in the room. So but for us, we're going back to sort of the DMV bill over we're going to education for the next couple of weeks. And then we're going to be asking questions. We'll have the DMV walkthrough tomorrow, and then we will have the education pieces for the next couple of weeks, highlighting and focusing our questions on these things that we're interested in potentially doing more of. Then we will dig into the bill itself and any possible additions or changes that we want to. And then we will be at that spot, and then we will look to spend any additional time past early May on queuing up and making sure that everything that we want queued up and ready to go that already has testimony for next year. That's generally the general piece. What I will say is that I feel that changes in the DMV, because of enforcement, because of judiciary, because of education, because of rollout, because there's way more to it than anything that's simple, which you'll learn about in the next couple of weeks if you don't already believe how complicated it is. I'm amazed. Everybody comes in and says it's just a simple bill. What we'll learn very clearly over the next week, there's no such thing. And everything you touch immediately has an enforcement or a judiciary angle, which makes the chances of us making a change extremely slim. So I don't want to raise expectations. What I did today raises expectations a little bit, but it's a multi-year process to change DMV things, because you are talking about enforcement, you are talking about education, you are talking about judiciary. You have to have an appeal method. You have to have a collection method for anything you do for enforcement. Anything you do goes out through the building like this, and it is way more complicated than what we think. So do not have an idea that you're changing a DMV bill that isn't already well witnessed this year. But you'll learn why over the next couple of weeks. So that's my scoop on that. But I need to, we want to know what would be priorities if we can look at making a change or two. But you have multi-jurisdiction issues when you start changing a DMV related thing. So I want to make sure to open it back up to anything else that the people want to highlight. I mentioned, I'm not saying I'll take it up the bill, but really understanding, I hear a lot about people paying for driver's ed education, all kinds of private and all kinds of efforts, et cetera. And now we have this increase in people that are doing home schooling that want a curriculum developed and that they could be approved in driver's ed. I'm not saying we're going to do it, but I'm certainly going to learn what it would take to do it. That's my additional piece.
Jimmy Herburn over here, chair walker.
Well, that's part of my plan. I didn't say I was going to do it. I'm going to find out what it would take.
I'm sure there are high schools that do it. Houghton High School has done that for years for homeschool. They fit them into the, going out on the roads in the morning and taking the classes. I mean, I don't know how many could be whole the high schools in the state. If many of them probably are already doing it. Not sure. But we have.
Anybody else want to bring up?
I mean, no, this is a request for Damien for tomorrow when we do the walkthrough for DMV. If you could, when you're doing the walkthrough, sort of point out of what was presented by DMV and what was put in by the Senate.
Side
And
by side.
yeah, sort of like a side by, like what was added and what was actually changed if it was DMV, like how did it change from the original draft form? Like just when you're walking, I don't know if it's gonna be a pain, but it's just good to know those key, differences.
I'll pull up the original bill, which was just DMV's proposal.
Yeah.
I'll mark off the copy and go through with the committee.
Okay.
Not quite sure how I'll present that, but.
If we have to hear more at another time, I guess the idea of just what was originally presented versus what they all added.
Yeah.
They're going to want to know the same thing, they'll see what they added, but that's what they're doing downstairs with the transportation bill. What did we add and change, and what was it the way that it came over from the agency?
Yeah,
As
Richie,
part of your request. Now you're talking.
we did last year, we had Tom but I'm not saying we have to, but he did present. The DMV.
We did.
Remember brought us notes?
Oh, okay.
But like I said, we don't gotta do that. I mean, the walking is
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, we took some flack for no donuts.
Yeah. Yeah, we did.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. The Donahue amendment from the floor that we committed to digging more into. What are people feeling like and opinions on what we agreed to or not agreed to and what we do or don't want to do in terms of how digging in and whether we're doing it from an agency perspective? And I guess this memorandum of understanding piece, do we want to see that document? Or do we want to bring Ann back in? We've heard enough there. We know what we're after. I guess for opinions on this. I want to make sure.
If we're going, we've heard from Ann. I would like to hear from the select board or someone from the select board to say, are you okay with this latest proposal from AOT or, I don't know. I hesitate to get involved in, it seems like the AOT offered and they said, I don't know what they said.
We do not want to, your point is we do not want to get into it. We cannot dig into individual projects because prioritization is a real problem. But in terms of, we can't influence individual projects in any way that would make people think that that's the case. But something's about that memorandum of understanding, something about the negotiation may highlight a problem. We are not raising expectations that we are changing that bridge design in any way, shape, or form. That is not our prerogative, and I don't believe at all. Representative Casey,
I don't think that we should go do something because of one bridge to make every other bridge in the state have to, every time we go to redo a bridge, that whether a bike path makes sense or not, I just, we're gonna lock ourselves into something like that if we
No, I
that one bridge. I mean, there's so many bridges, are we? I
I
don't
would want to
know.
clarify and say, we, meaning the agency, did and does consider every project, or whether it should or shouldn't have a bike path or a sidewalk. And it was my perspective that the process worked up to the point it was considered, and then it was redone to a bike path from a side, or not, the sidewalk wasn't gonna work to the, where it broke down is that there was a memorandum of understanding or who was gonna take care of it, or how that worked, and then they decided not to do the sidewalk because they weren't willing to plow it. There was something about a memorandum of understanding that was turned down, the project was reworked, and then the town, or at least I felt that there was no appeal. So my two concerns are, what did the agency do what is the memorandum of understanding? Is there a typical one? Are these different on every project? I don't know the answer to that. And then if a town doesn't like something, the select board never said that. We don't know that. The select board, again, whatever, but is there an appeal process if you don't like the way things work? Is there, or should there not be?
Well, on those, there was a couple of updated emails that we got from Ann over the weekend, and it sounded like the issue wasn't the maintenance. The town was willing to do that. It was other things within the MOU that they just said, hey, we need to hear more about this. And then that's my understanding is when the state said, no more sidewalk. So I almost look at this as, should we, like I said, this policy as a whole, not this individual project, but going back to where the town didn't like the language of, they had to pay back money. You put in parameters for the 30 days that they had to say, all right, if you don't like the MOU, you have 30 days. I mean, to put in it, like I said, policy wise, give a town, once they receive the official MOU, that they have X amount of time to hear, and get the questions answered that they have. So maybe it's just something we, like I said, policy wise, we outline the procedure, how long a town has to respond to that, instead of just giving the state carte blanche to say, no, we're done. Because it sounds like that's what happened.
That's,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a little different than what we heard.
Yeah,
And we haven't seen a copy of the MOU,
yeah, no.
and we did ask to see that.
Mhm.
Did we?
So,
I'm not
Yeah.
Yeah.
questioning that.
Yeah,
I don't remember
I
specifically
thought I did.
assigning the task to follow up on that, and I'm willing to do that if it didn't have,
Yeah.
I'm saying it, but
Yeah.
I don't remember if I have to specifically ask, or we asked in testimony, or where that's at, so I don't remember hearing
I'm
that.
not sure. I thought we were gonna get a copy of
It
it.
was brought up, you
Yeah.
did ask a question, I forget who you asked it to.
Representative Lally, and then we'll come over
You
here.
know, we've put $1 million into updating the Vermont state standards. And for me, this is a very unsatisfactory outcome of that process. If it's either take it or leave it, And so I would like some finer grained approach to this, find out where they are. We've heard, obviously, they have a lot of, concern about liability. But what was it about this process that turned that select board right off to even considering, doing it? So that would be interesting to find out, not just that specific select board, but what is the process? And I'm thinking to get a more kind of global feedback on this, it might be useful to take testimony from some of the RPCs, because they would typically be in that position of being the sort of in between. And, maybe there could be some kind of a better process developed, where there is more of a discussion so that, we can get to better, something that's closer to yes in these instances in the future.
Representative White was up, and then Representative Burke.
So thank you. I completely agree with Representative Lally in that testimony from regional planning districts could be helpful to this. And and agree with Representative Casey. I mean, we don't want to go down this rabbit hole for this particular case, but this could be a case study in terms of illuminating some of the issues that some of these very small towns have with trying to accept improved infrastructure. And I'm wondering if, would it make sense to look at current and recent infrastructure projects to see what the offer was and what the outcome was, just to kind of try to get a sense of what has been happening. Where are we seeing nice bike ped infrastructure as part of a new project? Where are we not seeing that happen, where it was an opportunity, but it didn't happen?
Well, we certainly have seen the testimony when they came in and showed us all kinds of developed and finished bike ped projects. So we have seen that part of it.
The bigger ones, yeah.
We saw a lot of the park combinations of parks and bikes and whatnot, but not maybe to the ones that didn't happen. But we have seen a number of positive ones. And I want to be careful about the characterization that it did or didn't, that the outcome is or is not satisfactory, because we haven't heard from, nor are we necessarily going to hear, but we haven't heard from every party that it was or was not satisfactory. You may be right, but the select board hasn't spoken to us, or we don't know what that situation is. We don't know exactly everything. We haven't even seen the memorandum, nor do we watch the video of the select board. I'm not proposing we do. I'm just saying we're not in a spot that we, as a committee, could fully say that we did or did not. We do know the process worked up to at least a certain spot, and then something happened. So, Representative Keeson? Oh, Representative McCoy, I'm sorry, you were up ahead of
I
us.
just want to, whatever emails you may have received from Ann Donahue, I didn't receive, so.
I didn't read any this weekend. I wasn't on my computer.
I'm trying to find it right now.
There may
It was
be-
attached to that.
I didn't, I haven't read
You must
anything.
have, yeah.
I didn't do any, this, I was out of town. I didn't do anything on this world since we left on Friday. So I had even till
I don't see
at 9:30 this morning.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, follow up Berlin Bridge. It's just me, Matt, and, okay, you're on it.
Okay.
Yeah, so Kate's on it.
They're in the dark.
She can read it and tell if I read that accurately. If
We
I
can,
did.
I don't have any, I'm not trying to not share it per se.
No,
We're
that's
not,
fine. I mean, I was surprised. with
This was Ann Donahue that sent it to us, yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
and I had asked Ann all along to keep Representative Lally in the loop, because planning has been one of her.
I don't have a problem at all. We just didn't receive whatever information you're
So-
talking about. So,
It was
If
just
you
a
want to go.
little bit more
want to speak
information
again,
on this
Representative
particular
Keeser,
project.
and then
I can try to print them out here.
Okay, first off, I'm glad that the attitude is that we shouldn't get involved in a one-off. Every time nobody gets it. I'd never get involved in a one-off. If I was in a situation, somebody says there's something wrong there, show it to me again. And frankly, I won't move until there's 3 times. So this is just a one-off. And we have to be very careful, in my opinion, that we stay out of the agency and the town or whatever negotiation they have. That's not our business as far as I'm concerned. Lastly, so if you want to talk about a larger global thing that I think we could get involved in, how many bridges does Vermont have that are like this, that have a sidewalk on the side? It looks to me like that was a 27 bridge that was replaced. So I have a feeling there's a bunch of them. So we might be able to be a little proactive in looking at those. I don't know, but that's where my head goes when I think of us being a board of directors, so to speak.
And then, everybody else has got a comment on this portion. We made a commitment to Representative Donahue in some way that we would follow up in some way. We certainly did that. And we made a comments on the floor. And we did make a commitment we would do something. We have to figure out what that's going to be. And then you go back to where we started. We got 4 weeks. We got bills that we want to do. We have a DMV bill that we don't have to do, but we generally have to do. And they'll become priorities in terms of what we will or won't hear testimony on and what we will or won't be willing to do on each part of it. So how important this is or how much of a commitment it is and time and energy we put into it versus some of the other ones, those are the pieces that we will wrestle at as we set the agenda over the next 4 to 5 weeks. And all of the queuing up for next year, we have no idea what the threats are for June, but we will look to get done the DMV though. We'll know more. We'll meet with the speaker every week on Tuesdays and we'll meet with her next week and we'll get closer to what our time frame is available. And we will have to make sure we have this list of things we want queued up for next year. And that's sort of the balance. Anybody else have any comments on those?
A lot of those gonna be for next year.
I would say that we would, unless somebody's advocating that we're gonna put them up here or that elevates them beyond just sitting there, then no, they were likely to just sit there in terms of whether we can or can't do them, whether they're feasible and whether we review them as we're taking all this testimony, we'll be in a better spot to know what we do or don't want to do over the next couple of weeks as we become an expert in the DMV, but there is no guarantee we'll take anything off of that wall.
All right, so some of them won't be getting trash canned yet.
They will be there until we adjourn at the end of next year. Unless we take them off and put them in something, or we pass them individually, they will sit there from now until we adjourn. You can't do that next year, but potentially.
There's a couple of them I'd like to.
Maybe I can only look backwards when I was looking at it before, Representative Casey, that when we left here last June, there was a bigger list than that was still up there. And at the end of the second year of a biennium, they all do go into, if they haven't been pulled off and put into something, they go into trash. And there were more than that were still sitting there when we left. And that is where the next couple of weeks will help explain why. There is lots of pieces out there, but I will tell you that enforcement is of zero interest in this building. You cannot pass a bill with enforcement in it. At least I haven't seen one in my 3 years. So if you want to do something with new rules that involves any kind of potential enforcement, the bill won't move, as an example. If you want to pass something with new rules that might have to be interpreted by a law enforcement person, that is very difficult to get through judiciary and has to go outside of our committee. So they're very, very difficult to take off that wall. You want to make a major effort to change the inspection process? That was a huge effort from what I understand 6 years ago when I wasn't here. The appetite for the amount of testimony and what car dealers to hear from and citizens and the can of worms of public input, the chances of getting something done on inspections. I would suspect, or somebody said about heartburn just a little while ago, if I was setting expectations that we think we're going to do any of those, I guess I'm making sure that it's a little more clear now. It's incredibly difficult. So to work on 5 or 6, very unlikely we'll do any. If there was one that we coalesced around, we might have to wait to get that one done. I don't know. I've never done it from this spot. I have done it from your spot, and I found it very hard to move any of them.
All right. Huh. Well,
I don't mind having the conversation on live. We are on the YouTube. I want to make sure that everybody's clear how incredibly hard it is to move this section. So,
I was kind of interested in talking about Molly's bill there, but I liked one part of it and didn't like the other, and I just didn't know when we'd ever talk about it. As I'm gonna get a camper sometime, it doesn't take much to go over 10,000 pounds. I was often concerned about the weight.
so when
My dump truck weighs 9,000 pounds when I started with, so all I can tow is a little wagon, not to go get a CDL. It's like, well, but
I don't know.
I like her eye thing. I like the eye part, but
and I don't know those rules, but when we have the people that are going to come in from that section, I'm sure going to ask those questions.
10,000 pounds is not much weight.
And I
think she said that was a starting point, so.
I don't know, but yes, then we're going to find out why that is there. But we'll have the opportunity to influence as we go. I'm trying to make somewhat of the expectations of which ones you want to focus on, and that overall it's really hard to do. the busing piece. The busing related to overall education reform and the busing, I would say that I've kind of been prompted to revisit this and, or maybe we visited it and I'm a little bit of at a loss. Some of the providers were adamant. There's a federal law that says you can't offer busing when you're doing public transit. You can't be in competition with other providers of services. And then I felt like we heard testimony where there are some areas of the state where they are doing, so they're doing nothing beyond what they're actually doing for public transit. And then you heard areas of the state where we got kids riding in with a number of providers in the same places we offer public schooling. Did anybody else feel like we heard both?
I thought we heard that from the nice young kids that showed up there. Did they say something about it? Weren't one of them talking about riding the bus with, weren't they talking about riding the bus?
Yeah.
Did anybody hear
We're
that?
talking about riding the school buses, and
They did.
my understanding was that, school buses are not like, federal law disallows the general public other than students from riding a school bus. But there's no such thing about public transit. But, so I thought there was an issue about, which kind of bus, we could take a public transit bus and put school kids on that, but you can't take the public and put them on a school bus.
Yeah.
That's my understanding of the difference.
That's correct, because only the yellow school bus can have the stop sign and lights that come out. And so that tends to prevent people from, putting their kids on a bus. They might have to cross a road. So I think like Tri-Valley Transit tends to transport older kids. And they do reach out to districts and they do now transport kids. If it's on their line, or they'll adjust their line a little bit to do it. And they do it because they're there to serve general public and they see that as the need. I was just talking with Jim Moulton yesterday on this exact topic. And so they reach out to see if there's opportunities there. They have adjusted their routes a little bit if it works, but it's all in partnership with the school.
I mean, just further on that, I had pulled up some email communications with Ross McDonald because we had some conversations about this, and I'm happy to either share these communications with a larger group or review them and give a quick summary tomorrow. But I'm glad you brought this topic up again, because I brought it up thinking like, how are we going to move this? How do we get this off the ground? Because I think it's going to take a little work, but.
My recollection is, when Jim testified, he did say, my recollection is that we couldn't compete. And he goes, the kids that they do take are on that route. They will not go beyond like a half a mile or to a mile. So theoretically, yes, you could pick some kids up along the way. But our job or mission was trying to eliminate buses, and you're never going to be able to do that because they still need to go back road and pick up the rest of the kids to, to fill the bus up. Could you pick up maybe 10, 20 kids that are on a state route, that are on a public route? Yeah, but it's not getting at our mission to sort of eliminate, this consolidate the bus, because, all kids don't live in that dense population. 34 miles, and that was sort of like rough. Is that you're still gonna have the same amount of buses out there, or maybe a smaller one. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, potentially though, like in Burlington, that's how it's done. I know in Boston, every kid in Boston, up to a certain age, 6th grade, I think they ride school buses. After that, they give them all a pass, and then they can. So there might be other places in, depending on where the schools end up being. There might be towns like Bennington or Brattleboro or wherever, where the district is small enough where you could say, we don't need school buses. We'll expand our public transit as necessary to do the school work too. It's possible, but you're right. It's not we're not all of a sudden going to have public transit that everywhere in Vermont capable of doing school transportation. And there'll be pushback.
But you've also got different scenarios for school busing. So you've got some buses that will go house to house or street to street and make multiple pickups. Then you've also got buses that will go to the Warren store or go to the general store and they'll pick up 10 kids or 20 kids who have either walked there or been dropped there. And that to me is a situation for public transit.
Yeah.
Picking up a group of kids and transporting them. And I mean, I think that someone brought this up, like that we are not, as an education system, I don't think we're obligated to get kids to school. We do, but
Oh, I hear you. So I almost sound like my parents. I walk 2 miles. But
Exactly.
I used to walk quite a bit. And you ever get stuck behind a school bus now? It's every like, literally every block. And you're like, really? They can't.
Kids be walking.
Because it came out about that if there's no sidewalk, they can't make them walk from one to the,
Yeah.
right? Isn't that the case? I don't know.
know.
Who knows all these rules? Let me ask you that. Who really knows all of what you can and can't do? Who really
as it was
knows?
said on the floor today, sometimes we need to get out of our own way, get rid of some, like all
Yeah.
these rules. Just,
Who really knows what we can and can't do? Who could testify to what we really can and can't do? Or where do we, and then you have ideas, but how do you take them and find out if any of them are applicable to a statewide review or a district-wide review? And what, I have a bit of a loss as to where to go with this.
Very educational. Maybe Linda
Any
McMahon.
idea, Damien?
Mhm.
Sorry, let's. Damien answers all our questions. Maybe we can ask Merlin here.
Um,
What was it you just said? You said about where you go to ask?
Who would know about what can and can't be done in busing and whether we can or can't explore this area? This is a task that the speaker has asked us to at least look at, and this isn't may or not be my last pitch, but it's one of these, what do we do with this? And how do we find out what you can and can't do?
So I know that it's gonna probably be different.
I'm sorry.
Because we have, I mean, any kid in the village can get on a sidewalk and walk to school, the elementary school or the high school, if they live within the village limits, because there is a sidewalk on every street in the village. It's a great walking village. But, you know, you get outside the village, there are no, except for the sidewalk to Polteny. I mean, East Polteny and back could come, but if you live on East Main Street. So I'm sure that's not the case in every community in the state. So, you know, it's probably like a may instead of a shall. And even our kids' bus,
It's like a
our
mile.
kids literally live a block from the school and they have not mine, we live 4 miles out, but they can get on the bus. And there's a sidewalk that literally takes them from their house to the school with a crossing guard, and they still get on the bus. It's a block. Their home is a block from the elementary school or the high school. It drives me
I went to
crazy.
school, 3 different schools from kindergarten to 6th grade, but they were all walkable.
Yeah.
Representative Lally, I'm sorry,
Yeah. Well, sometimes like figuring out what is the problem we're trying to solve, you know, writ large seems to be maybe that would be a way to tackle this. And, you know, I think the education committees in both bodies are trying to figure out the district situation. And when we figure that out, it would be really interesting, maybe at that point we could sort of interject into the conversation about, you know, transportation sheds for busing and things like that. It may be that some of the ways that this is financed would make sense in that still developing context of how we're going to pay for our education system. And what is allowed by the feds under the system we have now, you know, is maybe less important. Plus, I think all that's changing as we speak. So I guess I'm just advocating for maybe we think about suggesting that we become part of this conversation when they have figured out what it is they're trying to do with education, which we just don't know right now. But in the meantime, maybe we can get more information on all the different things that are happening and some of the rules that, at least as far as we know, govern what you're allowed to do and what you're not at the state level, because I mean, we make Green Mountain Transit pay for itself in the Burlington area, just the urban service, but everywhere else we subsidize transportation and transit transportation. So I'm wondering if we don't want to do anything to jeopardize that, but we don't know if we are. Does that make any sense?
I don't know the answers to any of those questions or exactly where to find. So
Yeah.
until the districts are redrawn, is what you're sort of suggesting.
Yeah, I'm kind of,
Talk about
then
working within the district to.
we sort of know what it is we're being asked to do. Because right now it's kind of like yes, in theory, we could speak to this. We don't know what is what they have in mind. And I'm wondering if it's gonna make sense to approach transportation this way in some districts more than in others. You know, I mean, there's a lot of the geographical distance issues and things have to be figured out.
It's gonna be
Yeah.
some long time on school buses potentially for people.
Yeah.
No?
No, you know exactly. I'm just saying, yeah, forget about any bills up there. If you dealt with them, that's fine.
No, I'm not saying that I'm saying that
Yeah.
the charge is, when you said, what problem are we trying to solve? Are we solving a statewide problem or just solving a challenge that I was given to understand what role transportation would play in school reorganization and how our kids go to and from? And I don't know how we can find out exactly how much we spend on this statewide, or where do you get that information? Who do we ask to call in? Who do we find out who spends, what portion of the budget statewide is spent on school busing?
Probably a lot.
I can talk to my colleagues in Budget Council and GFO, find out if they have data on that. As far as the school busing requirements, I can do some research on that. There may also be counterparts at AOE who have answers as to what the requirements are, but
Before we make it an assignment, I'd love to make it an assignment of who, casting a, I don't want you to do I want to find a way to cast a net out there that says, who knows about all of this and who could come in here and give us a little bit of testimony on what has been. I know there's been multiple studies. We did hear that.
I
There's
do
been
know,
multiple studies.
one thing, that once the school district has a transportation policy on busing, that they have to file it with the town clerk.
What do they have to file?
They have to file their transportation policy with the town clerk,
Each
the school district
school district has to file it.
within that town.
So there is a transportation policy for
Yeah.
each district.
Yes.
Did you ever read
It
one?
used to be, I mean, I'm.
Did you ever read one?
Clerk for
Did you ever
7
read it or
years,
just
so
put it in the
maybe-
file?
Yes, I mean, it's okay, there it is, transportation policy.
And it talked about who they were gonna pick up or not, or.
Or, students in the village, because it'll be different for each town, as I said. So in the village of Pulteney, I don't know if it said the busing shall pick up students in the village, even though there were sidewalks available, or if it said may pick up, I'm not sure. But yes, or what busing company they would use and, what the various routes were in town. Yeah.
People expect town clerks to know everything. They're pretty much, that's
Right.
why it's central.
Evidence suggests it's true.
Yeah.
They know a lot. The
Our
town
town
clerks,
clerks, the
they've done
town
this for
clerks
a
we
while.
interact with regularly, they know everything, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have anything on that? I got one more. No, that, we did hear testimony last week about, Highgate Springs from Phillipsburg, Quebec, being the only entry point in Vermont that doesn't have any welcome center of any sort or any piece. And amazing timingly wise, WCX ran a story that I had gotten a little bit of a pre-up that the highway from Montreal to that the last phase had been pulled out of the budget and not finished. But I would like to, at least from a very clear perspective, that has almost zero impact on the change of trucking traffic, et cetera. Phase 4 is the last 4 kilometers, which is already, for anybody who's been on that route, is already a 4-lane separated highway. It is not a limited access. There are a few spots where you can get off and onto property on that, but it is already a 4-lane separated with a big full median. It goes to the spot where the end of phase 4 is. where they are gonna finish phase 3. So it still will be all highway right to Montreal. So the click on it is a tad bit misleading. They're not upgrading that last section that hasn't been upgraded in a long time to make it limited access and look as spectacularly beautiful as the new one. But it is already, from a car and truck perspective of transiting, it's already a 4-lane separated highway. Phase 4 is not in a town or in any slow down area. It will be highway traffic and truck traffic right to the border. So the impact on traffic really doesn't change. It already, for anybody that does travel that way, it will still be an incredibly short trip from the border to downtown Montreal. Unless the bridge is backed up, but that's a whole other
Well,
process.
it's a short trip, like an hour.
Less than an hour.
A lesson.
Less than an hour. I'm another full exit or so further south. So you can be from Burlington to downtown Montreal, you're talking about, well, minus the border crossing, hour and a half, easily.
From Swanton,
No, from Burlington.
from Burlington.
You'll be in downtown Montreal in 45 minutes from my house.
Wow.
Another half an hour to get to Burlington.
I don't believe you. You should do a road trip.
We should.
Yeah.
We're going on a road trip. We're going on a road trip.
Saturday afternoon with a Montreal Canadiens game, you might have a good time getting across the Champlain Bridge, but other than that.
It's, anyway, that particular,
Commerce did that several years back, did do a weekend.
Oh, yeah, I was there.
Weekend?
I couldn't find my passport.
Yeah.
I lost my passport, so I couldn't go.
Yeah, that was with Mike, yeah, he was, or no, it was Bill Boxell. Bill Boxell was a chair, yeah.
Yeah.
I was there. Yeah, there's a fish out of water.
hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes, hour and 45 from Burlington to Montreal. Afterwards. And it is all going to be all 4-lane highway. Phase 4 is more of a beautification than anything. However, during that presentation, we did hear, there were questions here about charging and about what chargers existed in that rest areas. And I'm pretty sure the answer was, I don't know. Well, there none or there are some? Was anybody clear on what the answer was?
Of where?
On the welcome centers, rest areas and the chargers? that
Oh,
were-
I don't think,
Well, no, they were clear. They can't have them because that's
Yeah.
considered,
Right.
yeah, no, he did answer.
They can't charge for them. Right? They can't charge for them or they
Right,
don't have
but
them at all?
the state doesn't have
They don't
it,
have
and they
Yeah.
can't charge for both, yeah.
Well, I thought, didn't we have somebody in here saying that there were charging stations at rest stops in Vermont, but they had the big campers pulling up and charging and staying all night?
That happened at the park and ride.
Those are park and rides.
Oh, the parking lot.
Yes, yeah. Those were, yeah. So I think they're.
Was it private ones, right? Wasn't there some private?
No,
Rest areas that-
rest areas, though, right? They couldn't do them. I wasn't quite sure. It was brought back up to me, then there was follow-up questions for BGS and they were asked to follow up for this week and they're
Well,
not
I
able
asked-
to do that.
I asked specifically whether or not, particularly at the one in, coming up 91, that new one.
Guilford.
Guilford, whether or not, because you got all that room, couldn't you do it? And they would said, no, they can't put them in,
Yeah.
one reason or another.
Yeah.
Well, you don't have gas stations on there either.
No, and that's the other thing.
That's what.
I was in Connecticut all weekend and boy, every Tesla charging station that I went by was completely full. We'll certainly say
where
that.
was that?
Southern Connecticut, Norwalk to
95?
Greenwich and back.
Oh, 95.
91, on 95 and on Route 1 and whatnot, and every
It's a
Tesla
massive
station
community down there.
was jam packed. However, on Monday, they were empty. Everybody was at work.
Was there a line? Or were they just full?
They were consistently in and out, and they were all, there was,
So they weren't.
It was not an empty
That's a
one.
good sign, yeah.
they were, really were packed, but,
Just
Well, on our-
started up their network to their manufacturers.
oh,
So now like Fords and
Yeah.
Hyundais, others can start charging there, they have an adapter.
Oh, yeah.
So that's probably part of it. And a bunch of the manufacturers are switching over to that plug standard. In the future, now it's gonna go down to from 3 to 1, probably at some point in the next few years.
from 3 to 1.
There's
Yeah.
different plugs for high-speed charging. There's a Japanese style, there's the SAE style, And then there's the NACS, which is the Tesla plug that now the others are adopting. But yeah, that's like a new development in the last year, is Tesla's gradually signing agreements with other manufacturers to open up.
I didn't even know that existed. I just learned something. I didn't know you guys had a bunch of different plugs. that-
Oh, yeah.
Well, Tesla.
Which
no,
is my,
Tesla.
I will tell the new members my pet peeve. On the plug was one. The other one is there should be a standard that the gas tank cap is on the driver's side. You enter both ways, whatever way you're coming from, it's going the same. This side goes this way, this side goes that way.
I said my wife's car.
End of story.
I'm always getting it wrong.
Man, I don't get that.
Or make the gas holes longer.
Yeah, why not put them in the back where the license plate is, like back in the good old days?
Yeah.
Little there, flip down, you flip down anybody else, Chloe, ever seen that before? Pull the license plate down and that's where the gas tank enters?
Yeah.
I didn't think so. I knew it was, they were old when I was
My
young.
Mustang
A
was-
woman on her face says no, she never
The
has.
old,
Yeah.
Behind the license plate was where the gas cap was.
It's not a
So hold down the thing, then
Yeah.
fill it up and then
Yeah.
pull it out and it snapped back. The first time you did it, you learned how much power there was in the snap.
Bruise your fingers.
the old Bel Airs
Still like the
used
driver's
to, open a taillight.
What?
The Chevy Bel Air, and then what was the model? The other one that was just like it, but it was still Chevy product.
Right, it was just.
But they both did the same. We used to open like a taillight. It's like open and there's your,
Right.
Excellent.
It'll all over the place.
yeah.
Cool. Well, we had, like I said, that's the general plan is the next couple of weeks will be DMV 101. And we will ask all of our questions related to the things that we're most interested in. I will put this list together, make sure that it's in the forefront of my mind while we're developing the agenda over the next. We'll plan for 6 weeks, 4 weeks on the DMV, 2 weeks to make sure that we're setting things up somewhere in this follow-up of this Donahue amendment will be added in there. And that is generally what we'll do over the next. And if we end up here later than that, it will be all about queuing up things for the next year. It won't be about putting anything out on the floor. That's the general plan. Yes.
Oh, I just, they just passed the education bill out of their committee on Friday, but I was just thinking about the busing. It would have been great if we had put, gotten and the consideration of transportation in there, busing transportation, as they're having that commission look into drawing up the districts.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's what we do at this late hour.
Well, it's coming back to the floor 3 or 4 times. You can offer an amendment. Right? It's coming back to the floor. It's headed off the Ways and Means today.
What does the committee think about that? Like, just, just adding something that would address what,
I would think I would want to look at the language. I mean, I would assume the people who are doing the district drawing are taking into account of how far people have to travel and where the bus businesses, some districts pay for their buses, some don't. I gotta assume they're looking at all of that. When they draw districts, even if they draw a district that it impacts that, then they would at least know that it impacts. I've got a district, they own their buses, and another district that hires one out, and if those are gonna come together, then somebody's gotta work that out.
Yeah, I
That's what I don't think.
I would bet that none of that will happen unless we are very
Don't know.
specific about it.
Well, I guess this is where the discussion starts. Let's see whether it goes forward.
Yeah.
Gotta start somewhere.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's agenda is, we're up with our legislative council to go through the bill, and as long as it takes, there is sort of a estimated time and then additional time built in, so don't hesitate with your questions and your dig in tomorrow. Damien's gonna earn his stripes tomorrow. He earns them every day. Tomorrow they'll be in public.
Bring snacks and caffeine.
Yeah. We'll take a few breaks in there as needed.
12-pack.
Oh, jeez.
Don't recommend that.
We'll also introduce
9:30 in the morning.
Talk with a judge one
Matt and
time.
Matt are the two people from the DMV that'll be with us through the whole DMV piece. Matt Russo, Matt Costick, they'll be the two, just like Michelle and Patrick were here for the agency, there'll be a Matt and a Matt. Will from the DMV will introduce ourselves to them tomorrow, and then they'll be the people that you'll be going to for the additional support and information that you need, the same way you did with Patrick and Michelle. They're the DMV, Patrick and Michelle. We'll meet them all tomorrow, introduce ourselves, and start our work on the DMV bill. You have, unless there's anybody else wants to make a comment?